Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the money running the world no longer does. No explosions, no emergency broadcasts, no dramatic collapse. Just a quiet shift. Ships still move, markets still open, people still go to work. But behind the scenes, something fundamental has cracked. This has happened before, more than once. And every time, the people living through it were convinced it couldn't happen to them. That's what makes reserve currencies dangerous. Not when they're weak, but when everyone believes they're permanent. Right now, the global system runs on a single assumption, that the dominant reserve currency will always be trusted. History disagrees, and history has a pattern. The reason this topic matters now isn't because of one country, one debt crisis, or one political cycle. It matters because reserve currencies don't fall randomly. They follow a script. And once you recognize the pattern, you start seeing uncomfortable similarities. A reserve currency isn't just money, it's a promise. When a currency becomes the world's reserve, other countries hold it, trade in it, price commodities in it, and store their national savings inside it. Oil, shipping, debt, global contracts, all tied to one unit of trust. That trust creates power. It allows the issuing country to borrow cheaply, to run deficits longer than anyone else, to print money without immediate consequences. At first, it feels like winning the system, and at the start, it usually is. The rise always looks clean. A strong economy, military dominance, political stability, deep financial markets. The Dutch guilder had it in the 1600s, the British pound in the 1800s. Each era believed their system was different, more advanced, more stable. Each era was wrong in the same way. Here's how the pattern begins. When a currency becomes global, demand for it explodes. Everyone wants it. Foreign governments, banks, corporations. That demand pushes the currency's value up, which sounds good until it isn't. A strong currency makes imports cheap and exports expensive. Factories move abroad. The economy shifts from producing things to managing money. Finance grows. Industry shrinks. This isn't a policy mistake. It's a structural consequence. The world needs your currency, so you supply it. And the only way to supply it at scale is to run trade deficits. You buy more than you sell, year after year. The system rewards this behavior until the bill arrives. At the same time, cheap borrowing becomes addictive. Why raise taxes when you can issue debt the world eagerly buys? Why make hard trade-offs when capital flows in effortlessly? Debt accumulates quietly, slowly, then suddenly. This is where the uncomfortable math enters. A reserve currency country must provide liquidity to the world. But providing liquidity means creating more currency and more debt. Eventually, the supply outgrows the trust backing it. Not overnight, not dramatically. At first, cracks show up as temporary measures, emergency spending that never fully reverses. Central banks stepping in just this once. Balance sheets expanding far beyond anything imagined decades earlier. Each move makes sense in isolation. Together, they change the nature of the currency. It becomes less a store of value and more a tool of policy. That's when the narrative shifts. The hype says this currency is indispensable. There is no alternative. Everyone depends on it. Reality says dependence breeds resentment. As the issuing country gains leverage, others feel exposed. Sanctions become financial weapons. Payment systems become political tools. Trade becomes conditional. Quietly, alternatives start forming, not to overthrow the system, just to reduce reliance. Bilateral trade agreements, local currency settlements, gold reserves quietly increasing, new payment rails built alongside the old ones. None of these replace the reserve currency. They don't need to. They just need to reduce marginal demand. And this is the part most people miss. Reserve currency decline isn't caused by collapse. It's caused by erosion. Confidence doesn't vanish, it thins. Foreign buyers don't dump assets all at once. They buy a little less, hold a little shorter, ask for slightly higher yields. The cost of borrowing rises, not catastrophically, persistently. The issuing country faces a choice it hasn't faced in decades: support the currency by tightening policy, or support the economy by printing more. Either path has consequences, and choosing neither isn't an option. Historically, this is where political pressure intensifies. Populations accustomed to cheap imports and easy credit resist adjustment. Leaders promise stability without sacrifice. Central banks stretch their mandates. The currency remains dominant on paper, but weaker in practice. The British pound didn't collapse in 1945. It faded over decades. Even after the empire shrank, the pound stayed relevant until it didn't. Not with a crash, with a whimper. And here's the quiet irony. The very success of a reserve currency plants the seeds of its decline. Global demand fuels domestic imbalances. Power encourages overreach. Stability delays reform. By the time the risks are obvious, reversing them becomes politically impossible. That doesn't mean the world suddenly flips to a new reserve currency overnight. Transitions are messy, overlapping, partial. Multiple currencies, regional systems, fragmented trust. The world doesn't break, it reorganizes. And the issuing country doesn't disappear, it just loses privileges it once took for granted. Cheaper borrowing, global influence, financial gravity. Those fade slowly, then all at once. So when people ask whether today's dominant reserve currency will collapse, they're asking the wrong question. The real question is simpler and more unsettling. How much erosion can a system absorb before it stops behaving the way everyone expects? History suggests the answer is always less than believed. Because reserve currencies don't die from weakness, they decline from success. And the pattern never announces itself while it's happening. It only becomes obvious later when people look back and say, of course, the signs were everywhere. The uncomfortable question isn't whether this pattern will repeat. It's whether this time anyone will recognize it early enough to change the ending.